welcome to the Carpenters Brew, a weekly series designed to offer comfort during these anxious times. Today we're here with guest host and part-time professor, adjunct professor in Connecticut, Kevin Johnson. Hey, Kevin, how's it going?
It's going great, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. Kevin is one of the three hosts for Encountering Silence. If you get a chance, look it up under Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcast from. I remember, was it 2 or 3 years ago, Kevin, that you started Encountering Silence?
Counting Silence is now almost 3 years.
So when
We've done
Kevin
over two.
told me he was going to do Encountering Silence, I literally said, how many episodes can you possibly do of a show that's about not talking?
That's
And
right.
3 years later, they're still pretty
It,
successful. So,
and we are about to hit our 100th episode.
oh my gosh.
And we're nearing, I mean, it's a niche podcast, but, we're nearing over 250,000 downloads.
That's amazing. So. That's great. Well, so Kevin, I'm bothering you here on a Sunday night because one of the things that's come up several times as parishes are talking about how to handle the COVID situation, as we're not worshiping in person, we're doing a lot of things. We're online. We're Facebook. Good Lord, Facebook. You see 7,000 Sunday services on a Facebook if you're just scrolling through. YouTube's doing the same. Our Orthodox parish in Columbia is YouTubing
wow.
services. I never in a million years could I imagine the Orthodox YouTubing services, right? But one of the things that when we talk to people about, they're always asking what they can do to kind of preserve their faith. And a thing that I've been talking to a lot of people about is intentionality. It's an idea that we often talk about in the Eastern religions, in Buddhism, in Hinduism, but it's not something we've talked a lot about in the Christian faith. And as sort of my intentionality guru and my friend who has studied the Middle Ages, can you talk a little bit about intentionality within the Christian understanding?
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting, this question. I mean, and the way you framed it is exactly right. I mean, the problem is that this is kind of my hobby horse. I get on with a lot of people talking to me about it, but this idea that when the medieval synthesis broke down, in the Middle Ages, we shifted into modernity. We really shifted the way we think about what thinking is and what human beings are and how we approach stuff. And so that affects our language when we talk about thinking, knowing, etc. And of course, we bring that in when we're talking about faith and that. So that's really a thing that we don't think about too often, but it's buried in the tradition. The Christian tradition just assumes intentionality because intentionality is the kind of linchpin when we're talking about sacramentality and the attempt to communicate, reach out, understand, and praise God. So prayer, intentionality is a focus point and an essential key point. And so you just said that, we think Buddhists or Hindus or something talk about intentionality, and that's a thing for them. And that's because any of the traditions, anytime we're talking about the kind of the contemplative space, the space of letting go and reaching out to the divine, what you're doing is you're letting go of your own particular will and knowing, but your intention is clear. Your intention is what shoots you and directs you in the right direction of reaching out to the divine, to God. So intention is key here. So I'm glad you linked into that. That's kind of the piece.
Well, how do you so in the modern world, I think that oftentimes we take things like sacraments in worship kind of for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is how do we as individuals kind of recover our own intentionality with regards to the divine? Is there a thing that we can do as sort of individuals to kind of reconnect if we've been disconnected for, I don't know,
it's a great question.
Lives?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's exactly it. I mean, and again, you frame it very well. Modern society, there's no blaming here. My attempt, there's nothing I can say about, I cannot stop people from engaging modern reality. We're in modern reality. So everything we do directs our attention and intention. We're trained from the time we're little kids when we go to school, etc., to do certain things and to direct your attention and intention towards stuff, right? And so you've been trained your whole life to go this way. And so then when you shift into religion, into traditions, we have to kind of redirect and be regrounded into our intention. And so I tell people all the time, a good start, a good prayer practice is to have directly in your mind and in your heart the attempt that I want to meet the divine. I want to reach out to God. That's my intention here. And so I often, my prayer practice is basically, I say a kind of quick prayer, and I've kind of said this before, and then I can ground it, I can base it into something very simple. But the quick prayer I have something along the line is, Lord, I just let me see your face. And for me, that grants my intention of, I don't intend, I'm not literal there, but what I'm saying to my heart and to my mind is I want to be in the divine presence. Right. And that's what I'm shooting for. And so since that's my intention, I can just reduce that down to something like a prayer word. So you said the Orthodox, you can turn the Jesus prayer, Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, a sinner. That can turn into this intention of, oh, Jesus, I am turning to you. I really want to pierce through my sinfulness. I want to really pierce through my distraction. I want to really pierce through and be present to you. And so what you're doing here is you're trying to surrender your will to the Spirit. You're kind of putting your will out there and you're saying, Holy Spirit, guide me. Because I don't know your path. I do not know. Your ways are higher than my ways.
But we need to make this a centerpiece of what we're doing, is instead of just going in there blindly.
Yeah, because otherwise, here's a simple way to think about it too: is just being present. It's almost at this point a cliche, but our culture talks about mindfulness. The idea of a mindfulness. And the whole point of the mindfulness is because we are distracted people. We are doing so much.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you have no idea, right? We're just doing so much. So all intentionality does is saying, I am going to do my best. And I'm going to fail. I always remind myself, I am going to fail because I am going to, I am distractible very easily. But I am going to do my best to reach out to you. And I'm here, God, help me with this. I really want not to be distracted. I want to be in your presence. And so it's as simple as that. So, the reason, for instance, Roman Catholics, people, when they approach churches, and the very first thing, making sign of the cross when they walk into a building, for instance, or using holy water, or maybe bowing. People, when they start a religious ritual, is to say, my intention is, I am really trying to be here. I'm really trying to let go of the mundane and these other things, and I need to be here.
I think we've buried that. I don't think we realize why we do that stuff anymore.
Right. And we need to kind of recover that this is the moment where you're walking into a sacred space. The mundane world, you're walking away from it, and you're turning your attention and your intention to the divine.
That's awesome. Do you, as an adjunct professor, do you find that you have to teach students to do that?
Yes. Yeah, because it's exactly what you said. You're absolutely right. We do not know why we do the things we do. I'm at a Roman Catholic school. Not everyone who comes to the school is Roman Catholic, but a lot of them have come from Catholic schools and have Catholic background. And they'll tell me, they're like, hey, I'm taking a religion class. Yeah, I know this stuff. And we'll say something, and I'll say, why do you do the sign of the cross when you enter church? Or like, why do you? And they're like, well, you just do it. Like no different than like, well, I have to brush my teeth, right? Like I have a ritual, I have a habit, I have something I'm supposed to do. I'm not really sure why. And I try to ground them. I'm like, hey, this is the moment where you take a pause and realize we were doing one thing. We're about to do something different. This is a different intention.
I remember walking into an Episcopal church, and it was in Rock Hill. And when I walked into that church, I genuflected. But then when I walked into another one, I did not. And it was interesting because my wife asked, why did you do it there but not here? And I was like, because there's no tabernacle in here.
Mm.
And it's interesting because a lot of people, it's just an action that they do, and
Yep.
they're not sure why they do it.
Yep. Exactly.
And it's
And
interesting.
it, yeah, it's funny. Like, and I'm going to say something about my brother. This happened a few years ago, and this is not intended, So I'm going to clarify. First, I'll tell you what happened, then I'll clarify why I'm telling this. But it reminds me of this very point. A couple of years ago, my brothers and my father and we did a very special kind of male bonding trip. It was very strange. We've never done anything like this. All my brothers and my father and we went on a trip, and we ended up in California, and we ended up going to beautiful natural settings. And it was planned because it was like, hey, we're going to go to Yosemite Park, we're going to go to Muir Woods, we're going to go to these places, and we're going to do some hiking, and we're going to spend some time as brothers and father, And it was a very powerful thing. Well, when we're at Yosemite, they have a section of the park where there are some very old trees. And it had been closed to the public for a few years, and it had just opened right before we got back there. And they said, we're allowing people to go see these trees again. So I had told my brothers, I was like, this is a big deal for me. I'm a huge nature person, and I love trees. I'm like, I'm dying to go see this. And they were totally on board. They're like nature people too. They like it. My father too. But I don't think they were ready for it. And we got there. We walked in, and when we walked to the place, all of a sudden we're on this path, and they say, if you take this path, and it's very short, if you walk this path, you're going to go to one of the oldest trees left in the United States. And it's thousands of years old. And I'm like, wow. And they're like, yeah, it's really old. It's really amazing. You should go see it. So we're walking. It's beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. We come around the corner, and it's like, as you come around the corner, the tree's there. And like, it literally knocked the breath out of me. Like, we were walking. It was unbelievable. And as we walked to it, I heard my brother, he sucked the air out of his lungs. And as we walked, and we got to the foot of the tree, and there's like a fence, and my brother fell to his knees, not genuflect, but fell to his knees. And the next thing I know is he crossed himself, and he started to pray.
That's great.
And then he just stood up, and he goes, I'm sorry. He goes, I have no idea why I did that, but I had to. And that moment and I feel like he's not praying to the tree. It's very similar. I just said to him, I was like, this is like Bonaventure and the idea that God is in nature. The footprints of God is in nature, and he felt divine presence in this holy tree. The fact that he felt at home. I
always call it the cathedral of creation, as opposed to the ones we make. It's always fun to me when people don't like services being outside.
Right.
I'm like, well, his creation's so much better than anything that we've made. I don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at this. This tree here is unbelievable. Like, why wouldn't I want to say, and my brother's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, you don't have to apologize to me. I totally get what you did. I get it.
But no, I think that having that sort of being that self-aware of creation, I think it's just not something we do. We just don't think about it. And making sure that we go into, a situation, particularly like a sacred service, in a manner where we are intentionally being like, make yourself known to me. I think that so many times our religious and sacred services have become habits or social clubs that what we should have been doing is preparing for COVID. And then when it hit, we should have been secure in our situation. Yep. And instead, now we're like, oh my gosh, what do we do?
Right.
And I think that I don't know what it's like in Connecticut. In the South, we're unwinding this bad boy a little bit quicker than y'all are.
Yeah.
Now, granted, considering that I'm wearing short sleeves and you're wearing a sweatshirt, the temperature might have something to do with that.
Well, I'm in a sweatshirt because I just came from yard work, and I was trying not to get poison ivy on me. So it's a little warmer than my sweatshirt would indicate.
Cut that grass before the ivy gets up there, man. Come on. But no, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. There's no
problem.
Probably reach out to you again in the future. You're my go-to guy for all things medieval.
Yeah, totally. And and I would say, to the people who listen to you, it's not just church, like before you do Bible study, before you have prayer, you can set that intention.
That's
And
beautiful.
that will really ground you to say, if you're doing Bible study, Lord, show me what I need to learn here today. What are you trying to speak through your word here to me? Like set that intention
It
and
is funny how little
really
we
mean it.
pray.
Yeah,
It's funny how little we actually do that.
right.
There was
I
an
mean,
Armenian priest one time that I heard say, America's the most religious country on earth, and yet they're always surprised when there's miracles. It's
right.
so funny.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, no, it's totally true. It's funny.
all right, Professor Johnson. Thank you for coming on. And for those of you out there, we hope you got something out of this. Have a great week. Many blessings. And as always, Forza Milan.